Good morning. I'm George Willey, host of The Other Side. On this show, we interview guests who influence action, policy, thought, or anything that is significant. We first explore their point of view and then challenge them to look at the other side of their views. This generates an interesting intellectual quest that is lacking in most media diets. Here we engage in intellectual exchange of ideas. We ask the questions you wish the mainstream media asked before a commercial breaks in. Today, we have Peter Beard, Senior Vice President, Regional Workforce Development at the Greater Houston Partnership. Peter has a bachelor's degree in economics from Davidson College, North Carolina, and a Doctor of Jurisprudence from Syracuse University College of Law. That means he has a law degree. He seems to have been baptized by fire as he wound his way through the worldwide arm of the United Way, the Fannie Mae Foundation in DC, and as General Counsel at Habitat for Humanity International in America. The Greater Houston Partnership is the most powerful trade organization in Houston for sure, and perhaps without parallel in Texas. Why would they want Peter? Let's find out. Peter, welcome.
Thanks, George.
Peter, so what is it that you do at the Greater Houston Partnership?
So I oversee a program called Upskill Houston that really is about how business leaders work with the community and education leaders to ensure we have a talent pipeline that serves our community and serves business to ensure that they're competitive and can prosper. So
obviously, if you want to get the skills, upskills, meaning you want to kind of upgrade the skills of the folks that are in the workforce. Now, why is that necessary?
I mean, it's necessary for a couple reasons. One, in our region today, we have a number of really good jobs that require something more than a high school degree, but something less than a four-year college education. So it could be a certificate, it could be a credential.
So give me an example of what kind of job that would be.
So on the east side, we have our chemical manufacturing, petrochemical industry. Many of the jobs inside the plants are process technicians and operators of the plants, as well as instrumentation techs. They require a two-year degree from one of the community colleges. And depending on the kind of job, for example, a process tech could probably start at one of the chemical manufacturers for somewhere between $60,000 and $70,000 starting.
Okay.
And then with a couple more years of experience and over time, they're well on their way to well above 100,000. So these are really good jobs.
Supply and demand hasn't quite worked in that area then.
That would be one, but the employers would also say they don't have access to the qualified and skilled workforce because it is a specific skill set that's required. And so part of it is what's the pipeline to do that.
So how did we end up creating this gap? There is the positions, the jobs available, and then there are those who are not skilled enough to do those. How did we get there?
Well, I think there are a couple ways that we've gotten there. One has been there's always been a national conversation that success looks like everybody goes to a four-year institution. And so that...
Now, how did we get to creating that? When did we start that? Because, I mean, that's not been the norm.
It hasn't been the norm. I mean, when you look at kind of our, kind of industrial era and when we, obviously began to shift into a knowledge economy and into a technological economy, engineering and those types of jobs become much more critical, and that's where you need a four-year degree plus some. But when you look at,
So what did the folks who dropped out of high school ended up doing?
In the old economy?
In newer overall economy.
I mean, in many respects, there were the craft professions in the construction industry, and obviously there's various flavors of construction. There's the entry-level retail. I mean, when you think about our economy, there's a specific part of our economy that's an essential part of our economy, and some of those jobs don't necessarily lead very far. I mean, and it's really good to get into a job and get good work experience, but then how do we take responsibility as a society and as a community to support upskilling? But also, it's an individual choice as well.
Not a palpable skill. I mean, they, as you said, they get into retail operations, and then they kind of climb up, and then you can't go too far with that.
Right. I mean, when you look at kind of entry-level management for a retail industry, it's a pretty steep pyramid. Right. But I wouldn't say it's not a palpable skill. When you think about, what employers say they need in terms of their employees, in some cases they need people with technical skills, but it is a pretty common refrain from employers to talk about, I need people who can show up on time, who can do critical thinking, who can communicate, who can work in teams, who are safe, depending on the industry. And those are
a little bit of cerebral skills.
Those are employability skills. That what does it take for that? And then, the other piece to why 4 years may not be the right piece of this is we know that individuals get excited about very different things as individuals. Some people like to work with their hands, and while you can do that generally with potentially with a 4-year degree, there are some really good jobs like being a welder. I mean, and we all know that anytime we need work done on our home, like a plumber or electrician, how long it takes to get the appointment.
So Peter, how does Greater Houston Partnership influence this change, and where are you guys at in that continuum?
So let me set a little bit of context. The partnership got into the issue of workforce, partly because, for our economy to prosper, our employers need access to a qualified and skilled workforce across kind of entry level to middle, the middle skills level to the high skill level. And when we spent time, the business community realized that they needed to engage differently and help lead in the creation of this. And that, it was primarily driven in this space called the middle skills space, partly because we have a number of industries, whether it's healthcare or chemical manufacturing or construction or utilities or even advanced manufacturing, that are all pillars of our economy that require technically trained professionals that don't necessarily need a 4-year college education. And, there was the gap where people weren't having access to it. And part of it is, industry, in some sense, just assumed that it was being delivered. And in Texas, we recently changed what is known as the 4x4 program, which is generally a college prep program, to kind of the foundational program where there are endorsements based upon kind of industries or on kind of key sectors in an economy or in the Texas economy, partly with this notion that there's an arc of opportunity for folks who are thinking about business and industry or thinking about the public sector or thinking about arts and humanities or even STEM, that is somewhere from I can come out of school and start working with an industrial construction firm, and in 3 or 5 years they will help me skill up while I earn and learn.
So, some of our politicians are trumpeting that the positions are being moved, these jobs, these skilled jobs, highly skilled jobs, are being taken by other countries like China and even Mexico, because the manufacturing industries have moved there. Now, is that problem different from this one?
I mean, it influences this, but when you think about our regional economy here that is centered as kind of the energy capital of the world, and when we have one of the preeminent healthcare centers in the world, and the fact that healthcare is a big part of any economy, we've been able to kind of retain that partly by our own positioning and our competitive advantage. So
when you talk about medium-level skills in medicine, What does that look like?
I mean, it's a radiation technician. It's some of the, we all know when we get our bills, someone had to code them. And there are a lot of kind of, skilled professions that require that technical level. And we also know that in many cases there are pathways so that people can start working that then it's stackable in terms of I can start as a patient care assistant and earn my 2-year nursing degree and then get my 4-year nursing degree. So it's more a question of when someone fully upskills.
So nursing would fall within that.
It does. I mean, and there are opportunities, even within.
Clearly, I mean, now there are those who train to be pulmonary technicians, and I think there's a whole range of those things. Well, so I think we are sort of the epicenter of that.
Yeah.
I mean, so. Now on the more technical side, welding and so forth and so on. Now, the oil industry clearly absorbs quite a number of them, and oil is under our soil, so that can't be taken anywhere else.
Right.
Now, with the softening of the oil prices, to be charitable about it, how will that affect this initiative that you guys have?
It has impacted certain parts of the initiative, partly because the removal of oil, petroleum from the ground is different. But the technology, and this is where we need skilled engineers. But the technology of fracking and shale gas have created the feedstock to our chemical manufacturing, industry. That has allowed us to have, somewhere between $30 and $50 billion of capital investment. If you drive down 225 or out I-10, all you see is construction going on out there. Right. And so, those manufacturers are staying on shore. Granted, as employers, it's a highly technical and pretty efficient manufacturing process, but there's an industrial craft for welders and electricians and pipe fitters and a whole host of industrial crafts that are necessary.
So obviously, GHP cannot just wish and get that done. So you have a whole range of things that needs to be done to get there.
Right.
So what is it that GHP is doing or influencing or talking to? How is that? What's the mechanics of this?
At its most fundamental level, this is a supply chain problem, supply chain management problem. And part of where we have to start is with the employers and with the industry defining pretty clearly what they need from a workforce. And when you think about it, we have multiple players that touch our workforce. So, we need to invest in our school districts and our community colleges and our universities to create that pipeline of all sorts of people that can enter our regional economy.
So you're having direct input from employers.
Yes.
Large and small, and you have created a certain forum for them to be able to come and deliver that information to you.
And then you bring in the other players that touch the pipeline,
and
whether it's the youth.
We'll talk about the other players after this break,
Okay.
Peter. We'll be back. We'll be right back after this break to continue this conversation with Peter Beard.
On The Other Side, we interview a variety of people and seek to examine their beliefs, their opinions, and their passions. Then we invite them to come with us to the other side and look at the antithesis of their views. What comes out is an in-depth conversation without the vitriol of the talk shows, but a cerebral engaging of ideas you will not find anywhere else. Come join us on alternate Saturdays on this channel. If you'd like to recommend a guest for The Other Side, contact us at the email address on the screen.
We're back with Peter Beard. Peter, before the break, we were beginning to talk about how the Greater Houston Partnership works on a project like this, how it initially understands that there's a problem. Your membership brings that to your attention, and then I'm sure the viewers want to know the sort of the mechanics. How does it? They want to look under the hood and see how the wires are sort of connected. So you want to tell us how that's being done right now?
And as I was saying before the break, we really start with the employers. They've got to feel the pain point, and in many respects, they have to lead differently than they've led before. And many of the employers we're working with understand they have to engage differently with some of the stakeholders, but they have to also, in some respects.
How? What do you mean differently?
I think we've been used to, and you can see some of the polls and surveys out there. I think Gallup has done a poll that asks university presidents and provosts, do you think you're delivering what employers want?
I see.
And they kind of think in the kind of 90% range that they're delivering what employers want. And when you ask employers the same question, I think Gallup would say it's in the 12 to 15% range in terms of people that are coming to their door ready to do the work. And I think
Quite a gap.
It is quite a gap.
Yes.
And I think what we're seeing is, with our chemical manufacturing industry, those employers have realized that they have to, one, specify, but then they have to work differently with community colleges and school districts to help them understand kind of the specifications.
So, okay, so you have employers wanting employees. You have skills that they need to fill, positions that are requiring those kinds of skills. Now, who is going to prepare these folks with these skills? Who is going to teach them?
Well, and that's where there are multiple stakeholders. And so part of it is...
So let's talk about that.
In the near term, the community colleges, particularly for the chemical manufacturers, is a critical training and educational partner. One, because they've helped develop the curriculum with the community colleges.
But what were the community colleges doing for all these years, with all of the years that they've been around and all of the funding we've given them? What have they been doing?
I mean, when you think about a community college, they have they have at least two different missions, if not five. I think they technically have five different missions. One is an academic mission, which is being that two-year college that allows someone to start their college career in a community college.
So kind of a mini degree.
Well, and then to connect to a four-year degree.
Okay.
So really thinking about what's the completion and the transfer to a four-year institution. And
that's kind of biting into a four-year college program, I would imagine.
And we've got some great community colleges that make it affordable for many families to get that first 2 years to then connect into some of the public universities. Yeah. Another big mission of theirs is to be a workforce partner with industry, and they've done that a lot. And in many respects, as we've realized the size of our problem, they're stepping up in a different way. Employers are stepping up in a different way to say we need to work differently to kind of, in essence, create a stronger pipeline.
It's kind of the natural place for it to get done, actually.
Yeah. And it really requires a partnership between the two of them. Partly the employers being a partner that helps with curriculum and helping instructors understand, where the technology is, as well as contributions in terms of scholarships and, internships or, the ability, an apprenticeship so that people can see the profession, but also, access to equipment.
So again, how does GHP communicate with the community colleges, with the HCC? What is the mechanism there? How do you guys get that done?
I mean, we play this. One of the roles we try to play is how do we coordinate and align the multiple stakeholders. If we define this once again as a supply chain problem, then we have 9 community college systems in the region, and how do we get the community colleges?
Do you have the number for the number of students in those schools?
Oh, probably in the 250, 280 range, 280,000 range. I mean,
just in Houston. Yeah.
In the 9 systems that support this, and each sizable number. Right, and each system, from small systems like Brazosport and College of the Mainland to huge systems like Houston Community College and Lone Star, that's a pretty big animal. And, how do employers access those, and how do we align the coursework from an employer perspective, and then how do you help the colleges communicate to the potential students, here's the coursework and here's where you can go. So there's a big coordination and alignment issue.
So obviously the community colleges are responding to GHP's initiative, and they are probably happy to do that because I'm sure they understand that's part of their role, in fact. And
that's what their community expects of them as well.
Exactly, and that's what I was surprised at, why they hadn't done that previously. And you said they have. They have, but not with this type of support from the employers and a kind of a bigger view of things, a longer view.
I mean, one way to think about it is our school districts and our community colleges have a very specific footprint, and we have a regional problem, which means those multiple footprints need to be better aligned to help deliver against the regional challenge.
So, Peter, you think we are going to be able to solve this problem?
I think so, over time.
Okay. What time? What's the time frame?
I mean, when we think about what it took for us to get here.
Yes. Okay.
We'll begin to see. We're already seeing progress, but we'll begin to see much more accelerated progress, probably 5 years out, in terms of.
So you think solving this problem will also make us more competitive?
It will.
Okay.
And having observed other regions and other communities across the United States, Houston is in many respects at the same stage as some of the more advanced ones, if not further ahead, in terms of how we've organized.
If we fill the gap, you think manufacturers would be tempted to come back, those who have taken our manufacturing outside?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's a reason to be in Houston. As a manufacturer, there's always going to be, the temptation, depending, you're selling to a market, and how do you access that market effectively?
Because for manufacturing, we're just fantastic. We have great weather. We have all the land you need.
Well, we have two other things going for us. One, where Houston is situated, we can access huge parts of the United States market with rail and other things.
Right, and a port.
We have a port, which is another one of our sectors, because we significantly export things. I mean, there's still going to be commodity type manufacturing where it makes much more sense to do it in China, because that's a large target population of folks that it doesn't, the friction of.
So I would suppose that the political component on this is as important, that you guys will have to convince not only the trustees of HCC, but all the way up to the state legislatures.
Yeah.
So how do you all accomplish that?
Well, I mean, I think we start with the stakeholders, which are, there are 3 major state agencies that are part of this talent pipeline. It's the Texas Education Agency, the Texas Higher Education Coordinating Board, and the Texas Workforce Commission.
Okay. So you do work with all of them?
Yeah.
Okay.
We obviously work with the local workforce board here as a critical part of that, because their goal was to help connect individuals who are unemployed or underemployed to really good jobs. And that's one of the key systems that we have to navigate as well.
Now, before we fell into this hole, we were also used to this whole European model of journeymen and apprentices and so forth and so on. When did we sort of drop off on that?
But I think this is where one of the consequences of moving to service, knowledge-oriented, and a belief that 4 years of college was the way to do it. Yeah. We stopped investing in, shop in the high schools, automotive. When you think about where our cars are today.
So let me go back a little bit then and ask you about the political component. Is there a political will now here in this region to get this done?
Yes. I mean, I think we have a mayor that is hugely supportive of workforce efforts.
How about the governor?
The governor is hugely supportive, and I'm going to come at it from what a governor cares about. At the end of the day, a governor cares about how competitive his or her state is. We have a governor that really believes that attracting business to Texas is a critical part of that. And we know from an economic development perspective that companies make decisions about moving to a place, partly because of the environment, but one of the biggest drivers is access to a qualified and skilled workforce.
Of course, when we talk about skilled workers, we always kind of in the back of our head is the utopia, Germany, right? Yeah. They kind of perfected this, and look where they're gone with that.
Yeah.
How will we be compared to, say, Germany once you've kind of got this done?
Once again, culturally we're a bit different in Texas and obviously in the United States. And people have to choose. And I think part of it is how do we reach into communities and neighborhoods so people understand there are lots of different choices that are outside of what has been traditionally, I'm going to go to college, go to law school, right. Go work in a firm downtown, and I will have a great life. And there are just many different ways to do that.
Now, Germany has worked with the sort of the dual training model, right? Yes. I mean, they're both, they teach them in a sort of a classroom situation, and then they work as well, and they get paid to work. Now, would that model work for us?
Yeah, it does. And in fact, there are, on the construction side, much of that work is earn and learn. Is where you're, I think what you're referring to is how do you get a worker to the door of a construction employer that then is going to help skill their workers up because it's in their self-interest.
Yes.
Because if you don't have a lot of churn at your journeyman level, you still need a pipeline of people that are progressing up.
Because I understand Germany never lets the manufacturer of its engines for some of the cars outside Germany. They insist that they be produced in Germany.
Right.
Maybe we ought to kind of think about that.
Well, and I think we're seeing firms, construction firms that really do want to. They don't want to, import their own journeymen. They want to develop their own journeymen. And when you think about our construction,
Peter, this is obviously a very important part of what GHB does, and obviously what's important to the city. So I'd like you to come maybe about 3 months from now and kind of give us a update on where we are on this.
I can do that.
All right. With that said, thank you for joining us today. We hope we gave you some food for thought. Join us again as we take another interesting guest to the other side.
On The Other Side, we interview a variety of people and seek to examine their beliefs, their opinions, and their passions. Then we invite them to come with us to the other side and look at the antithesis of their views. What comes out is an in-depth conversation without the vitriol of the talk shows, but a cerebral engaging of ideas you will not find anywhere else. Come join us on alternate Saturdays on this channel. If you'd like to recommend a guest for The Other Side, contact us at the email address on the screen.